You know, who cares?
I'm right here.
I call to order the Strategy and Academic Affairs Committee. May I have a motion on the minutes, John Temple? John Temple, may I have a motion? Move. All right, may I have a second? Zach, I have a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Minutes are approved. All right. We're going to discuss university compacts. A lot of work has been done on this area over the last 30 days, as requested, and in particular over the last month. And I'd like to ask Dorothy to, where's Dorothy? I'd like to ask Dorothy to begin. And then after Dorothy, President Medik will speak with us, and then the Chancellor.
Good morning. Thank you, sir. Subsequent to our last meeting, we went ahead and began to work with a group of presidents chaired by President Medik, including Presidents Ginshaft, Bradshaw, and Michelson, to outline a draft of a template for consideration by all of the presidents before bringing it back to this committee. And the template that is in your supplemental packet is going to be the one under discussion today. We did present this template to the full Council of Presidents, and they have agreed that they, in concept, they like this approach. They would like the opportunity to consider it a work in progress with some additional recommendations that have come in since our conference call. But with your permission, sir, I'd actually like to ask President Medik to present the general fund.
Thank you, Dorothy. President Medik, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, first I'd like to thank my colleagues, President Ginshaft, President Bradshaw, and President Michelson for their contributions and participation in this process. We were guided in what we are presenting to you today by 4 principles. The first principle is keep it simple. I've had in another life extensive experience in instituting strategic planning processes, and this is an element of a strategic planning process. And I found that the more complicated the process was, the least likely it was to be successful and to be implemented. So we tried to start as simply as possible. That is consideration number 1. Consideration number 2, we wanted to ensure that there was alignment both with the state and the national level. At the state level, it would be alignment with Forward by Design. At the national level, it would be some level of alignment with the voluntary system of accountability. So we tried to say there are some things that are characteristic of all institutions that are generic issues that we wanted to have in the compact. Third, we recognize that we have an outstanding established major public university, and we also have a much newer liberal arts college. They're going to be vastly different in what their goals and objectives are. So we wanted to allow within the compact the opportunity for uniqueness. So one institution could have some goals that would be quite different from another goal. At the University of Florida, it could be the total amount of sponsored research. At New College, it could be how many of our graduates go either to top 10 or to Ivy League institutions, so it might be a different indicator. Finally, we wanted to allow for redos. We would start with the president and his or her board discussing the compact. That would be presented with the president and his or her chairman to the chair of the board and the chancellor, then to this committee, and then to the Board of Governors. So that is really the guidelines that illuminated our process. In the spirit of keeping it simple, we asked that each president, this would be item 1 on out of 7 items on the compact, outline what their vision is, not for the next 50 years, because who knows what's going to happen, because it's tough enough to see what's going to happen next year, but to have a vision for the next 3 to 5 years as to what the university might want to become. Again, giving you a couple of examples. For the University of Florida, it might be to become one of the top 10 public research universities in America, as measured by faculty quality, amount of research. For us, it might be to become one of the top 10 urban public research universities, as measured by doctoral production, research, faculty quality, and what have you. So we think that can be done in 100 words. If you need more than 100 words, you probably don't really have a well-defined view of what your mission is. Secondly, in part 2, we talked about institutional contributions to specific state and national goals, and we talked about one part is degree production. That's something this board spends a lot of time talking about at various levels. And 2, progress towards degree. Both of those are going to be important national considerations in the voluntary system of accountability. Third, and this is a very important and critical aspect in our budget, enrollment. We wanted to know what each university's enrollment projection, so that the board could put it together and look at it individually as well as in the aggregate. And 4, I think, is the fourth part, which is in the second page, is perhaps the most interesting part of the document. That's where each university has the opportunity of listing 3 to 5 goals that are specific. To give you an example from us, if we had a compact this year, our top goal for the year would be to obtain preliminary accreditation for our medical school. That is unique to FIU. Well, it's not unique to UCF and to FIU, although I don't want to speak for President Hiss, where he would rank that. That for us is the #1 goal for this year. We were doing a strategic plan and weighting, we would weight that about 30 or 40%, of the whole year. But there are other universities that may have, they may be building a new campus, they may be integrating a new program, a new activity. 5, we believe that universities from time to time, sometimes with the help of legislators, opportunities come up that were unexpected. And I'm sure that the Board of Governors would want to know what those windows of opportunity, what those possible unique opportunities are that may come, in the future. Then I think that I had a colleague of mine at the Harvard Business School who was asked to look at the IBM 20-year plan, and the net impact of her, this Professor Graham, on her work with IBM was that they shrunk the 20-year plan to a 5-year plan, because who can tell what's going to happen 10 years or 20 years from now. So we asked that universities look at the next 2 to 5 years and give a little sketch of the following year and a little sketch of the following year. Then this is pretty standard in industry, a rolling 3-year plan in which the next year you flesh out in more detail. The second year and a new year comes in, which is the third year, that then is sketched out in very rough detail. Finally, given the interest of this board, we thought that it was important that every university indicate for the next 3 years what degree programs they were at least considering seeking, not a request for approval. This is what we're thinking about. And finally, since we need to feed the bureaucracy, at the end we have 2 appendices. One is a budget for the prior fiscal year and for the coming fiscal year, and a data summary of about 15 or 20 categories, or 20, 25 categories at the end. That, Mr. Chairman, is what we put together. The committee unanimously agreed. Again, the committee made up President Genshaft, President Bradshaw, and President Michelson. We then had a discussion with all the presidents. All the presidents unanimously supported this, except they asked that they be given the opportunity, which I think makes absolute sense, to, after reflection, to maybe come up with a modification or recommendation here or there before this is finally adopted. That, Mr. Chairman, is a summary of the work of our committee.
Thank you very much, President Medee. Do you have anything you'd like to add, Chancellor, before we go to questions and discussion? All right, the Chancellor has nothing to add. Let's open it up to questions that you can address to President Medee or to our Chancellor. I might make a comment on a question that I think this was approached in a very business-like manner, and the end product is a very, very business-like product. And So for one who's in the business world, I'm particularly comfortable with the formatting and the intellectual approach to this compact. Thank you. Questions, please. Yes, ma'am.
I'm not sure that President McGee can answer this, but I'm struggling to understand the context in the compact as it relates to forward by design, for example. Are we going to take action with respect to organizing the thoughts or outputs we expect from forward by design that then the universities would be aligning to in this compact, or is the compact going to be the document that moves us towards forward by design? I just don't know which is coming first.
My understanding, which is what I'm comfortable with, is there's really a tops-down, bottoms-up. And so it meets some way. So forward by design is working its way down, so to speak. The universities are working their way up from looking through their knothole, and then we end up with a compromise. Is that a fair summary?
Could I just reinforce that? Governor Papa's way it typically works in industry, and that worked out a lot of things we struggled with, a quarter century ago, is that some general guidelines are put out by corporate. Those guidelines then are interpreted, not always in the way corporate would like, by the various operating units or subsidiaries. They develop their plan, and if things are working well, they all mesh very well. If they're not, that is an opportunity for a discussion. Hey, you're not really with the program here. Or alternatively, we don't think your program is the right program. We think you have to emphasize. And in that negotiation, which presumably would be between the chair and the chancellor and the president and the board of trustees chairman, you would iron out if there are inconsistencies or incongruities between the compact and the board of governors direction.
And with an emphasis on quality, there'll be certainly from the top down a continual emphasis on quality. Each of the universities is emphasizing quality. How we measure it and how we're what our metrics are and how we're doing against those metrics need to be laid out. But how we're measuring it is an area in which we'll end up with some dialogue for sure. Other discussions, questions? Yes. Governor Duncan.
As it relates to the university mission, I guess in my mind I'm trying to understand, are you guys intending that you're going to come back with kind of a very broad, all-encompassing, so you got every base covered and they really aren't going to be very different? Or do you really think you were going to come back with some more specific, different missions that do help us in understanding where you're trying to go with it?
It would be presumptuous of me, Governor Duncan, to lay out missions for New College, University of Florida, but since they're the two most different ones, I would say that the University of Florida could have a vision statement that says we aspire to be the top 10, the top 8, the top 10, let's say, for argument's sake, one of the top 10 public research universities in the country as measured by our faculty quality, by the amount of public research, and by the production of doctoral degrees, for instance. That would be dramatically different than New College. New College may say, we aspire to be the top public liberal arts college in the nation as measured by the places where our students are accepted and how many of them go on to graduate work and where do they go on to graduate work. Those are two completely different missions.
I'm sorry, and I didn't ask the question. I mean, I'm more questioning, do you envision like a UCF and an FIU, our metropolitan universities, are you going to be looking for particular differential opportunities between a metropolitan research university, or is it going to be at a higher level of just metropolitan research university?
I think if there's one university to which I would expect our vision would be similar to, it would be the University of Central Florida. So you'll have different levels of differentiation, but they're in a different community. They're placing emphasis in different areas or at different stages of development. Started, a few years before us. Their football team has a bigger stadium. I mean, so I think that that there would be differentiation even between the two of us, but I would expect that I would expect that I could probably almost 80% of President Hitt's mission I could adopt, and presumably, vice versa. So there'll be a continuum, of similarity, and maybe the next one would be the University of South Florida would be the most similar, to the two of us. But there'll be a one. I was just talking, with President Delaney, and his mission would be very different. So I think there'd be different level, but his mission may be closer to the mission of the University of West Florida, at least in general terms. But I don't think in 100 words we would aim to differentiate as much as we would in the second or third page, where we might have a particular field. We may want to become the foremost, let's say, law school and business school in the country in international studies. Now, President Hitt may have optics. So as you go into the, one thing is the vision, the other thing is what are the implements that would allow you to establish that vision. So you'll see more differentiation in point 4 between the two of us than I would see against, between, our visions.
Perhaps.
Let me just, Ann, did that respond to your question?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, President Genshaw.
I was going to.
The sale has been made.
I'm sorry?
The sale has been made.
Yeah. No, not yet. The compact planning is, in my mind, for the purpose of individualizing and reaching certain goals, so that while you have a broader mission, when you go down through a couple of pages, you'll see the very particular initiatives that we hope to reach in the next year to year and a half. So the College of Pharmacy is something that we want. We would put this on the list, and that would differentiate us from the others. So I think the specifics will be there.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Yes, sir.
Just very briefly, I think two things were especially notable in what President Medina said. One was the use of the word briefly, and the other is the phrase "as measured by." I think those are key parts of his report, and I commend him and his colleagues on a job well done.
Yes, sir.
And I just make a comment that I see nothing wrong with sharing of missions by universities. If you go back and look at the California compacts, you'll find out that many of those universities share exactly the same mission. But there's enough detail in here to isolate the universities and make them very specific.
And that, I totally agree. I guess my concern was if the approach was stay as broad as you can to keep all your options open, so that when we get these back, we really haven't gone very far into articulating focus points. That was really my question, which I'm happy to hear these answers.
Question? Yes.
This doesn't directly relate to the immediate discussion, but I didn't know where else in the agenda to bring it up. Many of us who supported the FIU and UCF medical schools did so with the hope that what we would be doing is to create, along with our state universities and the University of Miami and Nova Southeast, an opportunity to have the finest medical education in the world. And I think we're now beginning that process. It seems to me that we need to get ahead of the curve on this, and in March probably, I would like to bring up the concept that we create a vice chancellor for medical schools who would be responsible for coordinating these efforts. Hopefully we would ask the University of Miami and Nova Southeast to participate in this program as well. The objective here is to make sure we're all on the same page and we're all moving forward, and that we are trying to create a system that will be the best in the world. Funding, obviously, from the board staff level is a problem. I've discussed this briefly with most of our universities that have med schools, and the concept would be, at least initially, they would help fund this position. So I'm not bringing it up for action today, but just to alert everybody, I like to let everybody know where I'm coming with something that might be unusual. So I will intend to bring that up probably in March or in April when the chancellor feels like it's appropriate. But I think certainly the time has come for us to move forward. Time has come for us to move forward in this area. There's a tremendous opportunity there, and I generally believe the college is ready to approve this concept.
Governor Edwards, thank you for the curtain raiser, and I think what we need is to make sure the Chancellor is in communication with you, and let him take it from here, and you two work on this together.
Communication.
Yeah, and then if you think of something that you want to bring up in March or some future meeting, the Chancellor will certainly have been working with the presidents of the universities to get their input, and if it kind of takes on some support, then we'll know about that before you bring it up at the next meeting. All right. Any other questions? Any other discussion? All right. I'd like to thank President Medique, President Genshaft, President Michelson, President Bradshaw, and I'd like to thank the staff and all the people who have been involved in this. This is a wonderful undertaking, and it was reacted to in a very short period of time. So I think we're on the right track. Some of the stuff we started talking about a year ago in January is actually starting to happen. I feel like the board is really around. The boards and the presidents are taking. The board and the presidents are taking action here. So thank you all for your efforts. And with no further.
I'm sorry, Governor Dashford.
Yes.
Can I, beyond the compacts, I do have one other.
Yeah,
request.
I'm not calling the meeting to a
you're not
close.
calling
I just
it.
want to say, so the agenda item that deals with the compacts is with regard to compacts? Yes.
Maybe I just am not getting it, but it seems like on the front page there ought to be something that shows your progress in the critical needs area that we have identified in a specific way. Was that talked about, President Medique?
We did, discuss that, and we thought that progress would be different depending on which university, you're discussing it, so that is a possibility for the unique goals. For instance, for us in nursing, we're making a major thrust, in the nursing area, but not perhaps in another area.
Well, okay, but could you clarify in your unique goals that should be specifically something that's addressed?
We certainly could.
Okay,
Governor.
that's fine. Thanks.
All right. Any other questions on compacts? Chancellor, will you close this section of the meeting?
Assuming that the full board this afternoon approves this compact and leaving to the Chancellor the modifications that have been suggested, my expectation then is the board would expect to see draft compacts from the universities back to us as operating instruments starting July 1. Is that a fair expectation? I want to make sure that we understand where the presidents walk out of here knowing what they need to do, and then we'll craft the process that President Medique described: consultation, approval, backing and forthing, in accordance with our calendar.
I don't hear anything to the contrary, so that's the conclusion.
Excellent.
All right, this section of the agenda is completed. Now, what I'd like to do, yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, was there a vote taken to approve these, or was it implicit, or?
I think that'll happen in July. But what you hear is what I'll call a sense of the Board of Governors is proceed. Now, we've completed that section of the agenda. Are there any other items that any member of the Strategy Committee would like to raise before we adjourn? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I would like to know if we could pull together some information. My guess is we do have, but I would like to better understand, in light of some of the budget discussions and other things we're doing with the strategic plan, the low enrollment programs that we have across the state that are not STEM related, not the regulated ones like nursing and things where you have limited enrollment by other regulations, but not the ones where we're focused on our strategic plan. But the other programs that have low enrollment, I would like to understand where those programs are across the state. And I would also like to understand kind of where we are with some of the distance learning programs, maybe in some of those similar areas, just to get a better understanding of that coverage across the state as it stands now. Is that a hard-to-do thing?
Well, why don't we turn that over to the Chancellor, and in the March meeting, let the Chancellor come back and tell us the size of the question.
Okay.
Okay, if the question is easy to deal with, and it'll be dealt with expeditiously. If it turns out that your request takes a lot of resources, then maybe we'll spot check and we'll take some core samples and see what it looks like. But let the Chancellor come back to us in the March meeting.
That works.
Is that okay?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you for
Go ahead. I guess as a follow-up to what Governor Duncan has just requested, if we go down that path, the thing that'd be interesting to me is not just those programs that have low enrollments, but also the dollar value associated with those. Because the whole idea is, part of what you're concerned about is always expending a lot of dollars for programs where you have little participation. But the idea is that if it doesn't cost very much, it's a balancing factor. So if we go down that path, then we also add the question of how much would it cost us to actually maintain the program, even with low enrollment or...
Okay, we'll add that to the request. And as I said, it's conceivable that a quick answer is to do a couple of core samples, but we'll look at the resources and then we'll report back. Yes.
I think this could be a part of the compact planning, actually, because with the resource shrinkage that we're seeing, we're all looking at what can we stop doing that we're doing, and that will take time. It's also a strategic mission. It might not always be up. It's what are you going to stop doing so you can move things over to the core areas that you have. There could be a sheet added or one page added to the compact plans that talk about the either consolidation or elimination of some of these programs.
And that might be the most efficient way to deal with it, is to fold it into the compact. And then, since each university is focusing on its vision and mission, it's an easy way to get to it. So that may turn out to be the best way.
Right. Now, the other part of your question on distance learning, that would be a different request.
All right. Lynn?
This may have already been addressed, but are we looking back at our enrollment growth projections over the horizon and assessing those? You know, the demographic trends that we're seeing are rather bizarre these days, and I'd just like to make sure that we fine-tune that to the extent we need to.
And I think what we asked at the last meeting was that we go back to the original strategy document, that we integrate into that document where we are now with regard to approving structure and compacts, and that we go back and reassess the assumptions underneath that strategy. And when will we be ready with that, Chancellor?
We may be ready before the board has time to address it, but clearly the sequencing was we were going to take a look at the compacts, try to understand those within the context of what we had said in our previous strategic plan, and then start that movement, that convergence, if you will, between our strategic plan and what the compacts are saying. So I would say we could deal with it as early as June, but we really need to look at the compacts first and then start that process of convergence. So it would be the fall, sir.
I think maybe there's a little miscommunication here. If Governor Pappas is making the request that I believe she's making, I think as to the assumptions underlying the original strategic plan,
correct,
you can probably carve that out and have that back here by March.
We're always looking at the demographics, and we can report that as early as March. Would that
be satisfactory? Okay.
Certainly on the demographics.
Right. I think I would go back to the initial strategic plan and look at the assumptions and any assumptions that you can test between now and March and report to the committee and to the presidents with regard to, you ought to go forward with that. Demographics would be one, but there's issues about nursing and workforce needs and all of that. You might just as well update it between now and March if you can.
All right.
All right? And that satisfies you, Governor Pattis? All right. Any other matters to be brought before the committee? I have one last item. I would like to really ask the Budget Committee to take the lead on matters that I'm delegating here, on matters that ordinarily we would be thinking about at this committee. But I think if we had some leadership with Governor Perez's committee, it would be helpful. And the type of things I'm thinking about are notions about increasing total funding necessary to ensure students have access to the undergraduate education, develop an enrollment growth funding formula, develop a revised funding formula that rewards retention and graduation, and the kind of things that we've all been talking about that are going to go in the compact. And would you be willing to do that, Governor Perez?
Governor, we appreciate you giving us all the easy ones.
That's a yes. Thank you very much. Anything else to come before this committee, please? Thank you all for your participation. Meeting adjourned.
There will be a 10-minute